Hi all, let's have a look at an interesting encounter in the World Championship candidates from round 5 in Nepomniachtchi against Wang. So e4 from in Nepomniachtchi, Wang plays e5. We have the dreaded Petrov's defense, one of the most solid systems possible against e4. But there is quite an exotic new trend in this for white. It's not as dull as you might think, depending on the variation white chooses. Here white takes on e5, d6, knight f3, and now black takes on e4. And the new trendy move here to create excitement is knight c3, which can, for example, lead to this position after knight takes, d takes, capturing away from the centre, opening up the bishop to prepare to castle queenside. So for me, this gives excitement to the whole thing, actually. This is a very long example sequence which has been trodden on by some key games. So white has a small edge, for example, in this example. So opposite side castling could result. Sometimes both sides castle queenside. Anyway, it's fairly interesting, knight c3. But in this game we have the pretty dull d4. And we get a position where it's dull to me because the lack of structural imbalance. There's only this one shared file to play with. So bishop d3, bishop f5. So it has some characteristics with the exchange French, which is thought to be very drawish. Well, it is statistically very drawish. So white castled here, bishop e7, rook e1. Black castles, knight bd2, knight d6, knight f1, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, c6. Can white really get something like water from the stone here? It's just so solid, isn't it? We have bishop f4, knight a6. So this route, you might think, well, actually, what was wrong with knight d7? Nothing particularly. It doesn't seem to lose outright to anything. There isn't a major knockout blow. White could probably just double on the e file at some point and just be solid. It's that one shared file which is making this pretty drawish. The gravity of this. So as an alternative, like rook e2 and then doubling, it's nothing really much to worry about, I think, for either side. So anyway, knight a6, you might think is a little bit peculiar. We have now h4. This is actually quite an interesting move, trying to go for a form pawn, which is why I thought I'd cover this game, actually. Anything form pawn related, I thought might be interesting. So we have knight c7. So the first thing to point out is bishop takes h4 fells to knight takes, queen takes, and then bishop takes d6. Yes, that would be losing material. So we have knight c7. Black didn't bother to attack the queen. The queen, I assume, could just drop back somewhere or play, maybe queen b3, in fact, and kick that knight back. So anyway, knight c7. We have knight g5 with a concrete threat of queen takes h7 mating. Bishop takes g5 is played. If g6, you might think, well, is this like a committal decision? Let's explore g6 instead, which is also committal in its own right. Knight e3, say bishop takes, queen d7. White's going to get a small edge here. There is an imbalance in the position that dark square bishop might have a small edge. Interestingly, f5, you might think, to block this diagonal, really runs into queen g3. This is actually quite powerful, this battery, funny enough. I said as though, black can't possibly lose, but there is a potentially, this is actually a sort of disastrous position. The knight's pinned because of taking, and then bishop takes c7. And whatever way black plays it here, for example, rook takes e7, white's getting a big advantage there, winning material. So this does represent the disaster scenario. If knight d8, this is also very, very pleasant for white. Yeah, you wouldn't really want to play f5 anyway. White's definitely doing well there. f5 is just a way for black to have a lost position from a solid opening. So bishop takes g5, much more sensible. Bishop takes f6. bishop f4, queen d7. Here, if rook e8, in fact, queen g3 might promise white something. Again, this pressure on this diagonal. If taking here, knight e3, there's continual pressure, it seems, on the black position. For example, like this, white should have a small edge. So that ties black a bit. Yeah, there are certain issues there. So queen d7 though, knight g3. We have rook a e8, and now white gives up voluntarily that dark square bishop. This big tempo gain, knight f5. Now queen h3, which has the threat of knight h6 check to win the queen. So black has to parry that somehow and played king h8. So just yeah, so otherwise, yeah, knight h6 is on the card. So king h8, we have h5, and this form pawn is a concern. If black ever plays a move like h6, you can imagine once this knight supported, it could jump into g6. It doesn't seem like a very sensible idea to weaken g6. So the lesser evil might be to invite white to play h6 at some point and get the rooks off. Black tries to get the rooks off ASAP. And you might think, well, this is a dreadfully dull game I've picked for you today, isn't it? But no, there's a form pawn, so it must be covered. What happens with this form pawn? So queen takes e8, for example, as an alternative, by the way, gives white an edge after h6. The form pawn here in this variation, fracturing the pawns, is enough to actually win a pawn, and it's going to be really dangerous. For example, like that is a disaster. This is just, yes, it's going to tilt in white's favour dramatically. So knight takes needed precision. So here, I think h6, g6, that's a nice pin. So we have g4, and so now h6 is on the cards without that pin, it seems. And also you'll note here, there's a little subtlety about this position, or rather, I'd like you to note that queen a3 is sometimes a resource looking at a7 and f8. So black protected this pawn. This is a loose pawn here for the picking with a6. Just to show why that's significant concretely, say h6. Queen a3 here, and although this is not convincing, actually h6 is actually kind of a useful move for this, knight d6, trying to undermine this structure. But even so, white might end up with a small edge here. So this is something to be aware of in this position, queen a3. So a6 kind of parries that. And white closes up that whole opportunity, that whole third rank, with b3 as sort of bigger fish to fry to try and weaken d5 here by playing c4, or try and get a central pass pawn if black like dead take. So that's a change of plan. I mean, that was only a tactical threat anyway. So we have queen e6, knight e3, blocking that e-file, starting to put pressure on d5. Knight d6, h6, installing the form pawn, g6. Yes, accepting the structural fracture is not a good idea. This is a significant advantage for white. There's too many responsibilities in the black position there. We have g6, c4, d takes, b takes. You might think, what is this? And in fact, Ian Nepomniachtchi has clearly watched all my neural network videos with form pawns, because there's a really beautiful idea that exists in this with that goal-hanging pawn to pass the ball to the goal-hanging pawn after knight takes c4, which wasn't played. Can you see what white plays here? Well, I'll get you to this position. What does white play in this position, which is really quite good? There's only one. It's one move which causes black problems. In particular, queen h2. It keeps hold of the h6 pawn against queen c1 check, and it means there's an infiltration, nasty. So, for example, here, this is going to be very nice, getting that form pawn into a pass pawn mode. Very dangerous and winning for white. So, yeah, some interesting variations now crop up, basically, because of this form pawn. So king g8. So aren't you glad I'm showing you this wonderful game today? So Queen H2 is played here. We have King F7. Yeah, same sort of ideas. If knight takes, then check. Taking here, it's a big advantage again. But in fact, instead of taking that, there's Queen B3 in this particular position. Nasty pin. That's even better here. Or in fact, that's the way to play this. So here, just picking up material. So after Queen H2, we have King F7, C5, pretty committal. Knight B5, Queen B8, Queen D7. Now here, in fact, this may be a major slip up. Queen D7. I think it might be the mistake of the game. In fact, if Knight takes D4, as an example, check. Queen E7, it's difficult to say that White's any better here. It's going to be lots of checks. It looks like even technically. And if we don't play Queen takes B7, if we play Queen H8, then King E7 takes here, Queen F7. This should be equal. There's not a problem with that pawn. The king's going to be in time there. So we have Queen D7, which is a mistake, it turns out. After Queen H8, we have now King E6, and now critically for Black, they might have missed this dynamic possibility. White plays, guess what White plays if I give you 5 seconds here. Okay, 500 points. White plays F4 in this position. So Black has to trade carefully. He played Knight takes D4. If he plays Queen takes D4, can you spot the move here? For 100 points. Okay, Queen E8 is checkmate. The king's not using D5 there. And if Queen E7, F5 check, King F2, believe it or not, gives White a significant edge here. It's this. There's this very significant pressure to deal with. For example, like this is once the checks are over, this Queen G7, and then it's going to be a big advantage for White. White can get a big advantage. So yeah, it's very, very tricky here. So Knight takes D4 was played. We have check, Queen F7, and this loses material. However, if King E7 had been played, then Queen takes also is just immediately losing to H7 there. So Queen F7 rather, and now we have White winning material after check, getting this position again, and now Queen D8, and it's very, very tricky for Black indeed with the threat of Queen D6, again Queen D7. But now, yeah, there's a problem for Black. Can you see what does White play in this position, which wins material? Okay, F5 check. So after G takes, Knight takes. Yes, it's overload for the king. A whole piece has been won there, and after Knight E3, the game ended here. It's pretty easy to convert this. For example, if the game continued, a bit like this, for example, is absolutely winning. But the game ended here after Knight E3. So it shows that the form pawn weapon, even in a dreadfully solid opening choice from both Black and White, White didn't stimulate more interest in the position with Knight C3, but played that symmetrical, only one file variation. But with the form pawn, it seems as though, Nepo, has been obviously studying the neural network videos on this channel with the form pawns. So I'm happy to, be an amazing resource, even for world-class players, to emphasize new amazing strategies like form pawns, as was evidenced in this game, leading to this victory. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you're keeping safe, washing hands frequently, etc. And there's lots of good stuff to check out, if not chess. There's lots of good TED videos. Bill Gates has done his sequel video to the one 5 years ago where he warned about the coronavirus. He's done another video which is well worth checking out. Just popped up yesterday on TED think it's already got more than 500,000 views. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff on TED. Ideas worth spreading. It's better than other things which are currently spreading. No, it's TED. It's nice ideas that are worth spreading. So I'd recommend that as well as your usual chess stuff in the current times we're in. So I hope anyway, I'm hoping to check out other mega exciting games from the candidates that were played, and any feedback, comments, questions, leave in the comments. If you want to challenge me at Chessworld, just register with that bit.ly/Chessworld or Kingscrusher.tv. If you register, I'll be able to invite you for a game later. I'm playing quite a large number of games at the moment, have good fun. So, okay, thanks very much.